I'm doing a recording of a game I'm playing against forum member. I think his name is Robofriven. Um, Originally I thought it was Robofriven, but kind of realizing that makes no sense. So I think it's Robofriven. And if maybe he's talking about that that game that's a sequel to Myst. I don't know. I played it, didn't beat it. Anyway, we got a game here. He played e4. I usually play the Pirc, so that's what I'll play. d6. The plan is, if he plays d4, to play knight f6, followed by g6, bishop g7, and castle kingside. Rob just got done playing a game in which he had a nice little comeback against a slightly higher rated player. I was hoping he would pull it out, but the other guy found a way to checkmate him near the end. So let's see what he plays here. I expect d4. By the way, if anyone wants to do a recording with me, let me know, because my free trial of Camtasia runs out in less than 2 weeks now, and I haven't had any success using the other recording options. The free recording thing that Josh uses a lot doesn't work with Windows Vista, and Windows Media Encoder doesn't work with my processor. So this is pretty much my only option as far as I know. And it's a nice program, it's just unfortunately like $300. Alright, so this is basic opening of the Pirc. Here white chooses what kind of Pirc he wants to play. f4 initiates the Austrian attack. Knight f3 I think is called the Geller quiet system. I've talked about that. I don't really remember the other ones. It's not important. Basic idea is if white sets up for, if he sets up with bishop e3 and then queen d2, preparing bishop h6, black's move bishop g7 is just a waste of a tempo because white's going to play bishop h6, so he should just leave the bishop on f8 and play a move like c6. I think in this variation the idea is to play h6 here, and then after bishop e3 we have a game that's going to be, okay, well he took, but if he'd played bishop e3 intending queen d2, we'd have a game similar to the game we would have had after he played bishop e3, except that I'd have a pawn on h6, and it's hard to say whether that pawn being on h6 instead of h7 hurts me or helps me. I don't know. Alright, so I'm going to play bishop g7, I'm going to play f5 so that my bishop can develop after he takes. I think my development's pretty easy here, and after bishop g7 my king's going to be really safe when I castle kingside. I've got 4 pawns there, a dark square bishop, and he has no dark square bishop. Got to get my queenside developed though, and I want to get castled as soon as possible. So the plan is bishop g7, castle kingside, f5, after e takes, bishop takes, rook e8, whatever. Stuff like that. His plan, maybe he should try something like moving the queen and castling queenside, because he's closer to castling queenside than kingside, and if he doesn't castle quickly and I do, the fact that his king is still in the center will probably hurt him. He could try f4 here. Alright. So it's a fine move, just a regular developing move. Looks like he wants to castle kingside. That's fine. He'll have time to do that, I think. And also, he's by putting the bishop on d3, he's preventing me from playing f5, which is something I want to do. So that's probably a decent move. But I'm going to continue with bishop g7. The reason is that if I can get castled and I can get a rook on e8 pinning the e-pawn, then I can play d5. And if he plays knight takes d5, I can play queen takes d5, and his e-pawn can't take back because it's pinned. I'm sure he's going to bring out his knight though, and then I'll castle and he'll castle, and I won't have that option. So this is not all that bad for him. It's just that my king is going to be pretty safe, so I don't have a whole lot to worry about except development. I do have to worry about at some point trying to get a hold in the center. Yep, that's what he's doing. He's developing, and then he's going to castle. I'm going to castle just because it's an obvious move here. It invites him to make a mistake by not castling, but I assume he's going to castle. Alright, and then I'll be playing for the move d5, so I'll probably play c6 and d5 eventually, but I want to get developed too, so let's see, maybe bishop g4 is an option. Maybe bishop e6, but probably c6 first so that he can't just play d5. h4, getting aggressive. That sort of adds power to the move bishop g4. It really adds power to the move bishop g4, because now he can't kick my bishop. Wow, is that an aggressive move. Bishop g4 will also prevent h5, unless he wants to sack an exchange, because my bishop can take. Alright, I like this. This is going to be a good fighting game. So, I mean, I don't see a reason not to develop with bishop g4. Preventing h5, preventing him from moving his knight, preventing him from moving his queen. Well, it doesn't prevent him from moving his queen, but I can mess up his pawn structure, although that gives him the ability to use the half-open g-file. I think, though, that in that situation, I'd be better. Bishop g4 is fine. Now I've got to get my knight developed. And actually, now that his knight is pinned, the move knight c6 will threaten to take the d-pawn. The position of this bishop might hurt him a little bit. Even if the bishop weren't there, though, a knight on c6 would threaten bishop takes f3, because if he takes back with the queen, I win his d-pawn. If he takes back with his g-pawn, his pawn structure is messed up. So that's the plan, knight c6, developing with tempo because I attack the d-pawn. Okay, so he moved his queen away, allowing bishop takes f3. I'm not sure that that's a good idea. I'm thinking about bishop takes f3, g takes f3. I'm trying to figure out if that's good for me or not. What I can do after that is play h5, then move my king up and play, especially if he castles queenside, bishop h6, threatening a pin. He would have the move f4, so I'd have to find a way to deal with that, but that'd be interesting. At that point, his only way to attack my king side would be to advance his f-pawns. But even if he gets a pawn to f5 and then takes on g6, I can take back with my f-pawn, and he fixes the problem I have with my pawn structure. Although that fixes his problem too. So I'm not so sure that that's good for me. But if I don't take, he can play something like knight h2, and then I have to move my bishop away. His knight's in terrible shape, but probably not so bad for him. Could also just play knight c6 here, threatening to take on f3 and then take the d-pawn. He could play bishop b5, protecting the d-pawn and attacking my knight. And I think he'd be fine. Alright. But then I could play the move f5, because his bishop's no longer guarding that square, and if he takes, I take back with my bishop, and my bishop's opened up against this pawn. If he takes my knight with his bishop, I'd have two bishops against two knights, and I have an half-open file for my rook. I think that would be fine for me. So, knight c6, and if he plays bishop b5, I play f5. That looks interesting. That looks interesting, at least. So, knight c6. So now I'm threatening bishop takes, g takes, knight takes d4. intending knight f3, knight takes f3 check. Of course, you wouldn't allow that, but that combination wins a pawn. If bishop b5, my plan is f5. He may castle queenside here. I'm sorry, no, that just drops a pawn. So what's he gonna do? He could play d5, but that's very, very dangerous because it'll open up my bishop on the long diagonal at some point, and it makes his pawn center static. Right now it's dynamic. I constantly have to be thinking about e5 and d5 as possibilities, but as soon as he plays d5, his pawn center is stuck, and that e-pawn is backwards. He played d5. Alright, well, it doesn't hurt him tremendously right now, so maybe that was his best move, I don't know. What can I do here? Knight b4 doesn't seem to accomplish much and just gives him a revealed attack with his knight. He can move his knight and his queen will be attacking my undefended knight. Maybe I could play h5 here. Move my king up, and then if he castles queenside... Oh, I'm sorry, I can't play h5 here, but maybe I can be thinking about it, playing h5, king h7, and threatening bishop h6. Gotta figure out what to do with my knight here first, though. Maybe just put it back on e7. Or I could put it on e5. Then he can take with the knight. I take back with the f-pawn. And he can play f3, my bishop moves. He can play g4. I don't know about that. That gives him kind of a pawn storm over there. If I take his knight, and he takes my knight, and I take his pawn, and he takes my pawn, and I move my rook over, where do I stand? I'm threatening both his rook and his pawn, but he'd probably just move his rook over to attack my bishop. My bishop would have to move back to f3, I guess, or h3. And then he could try something like bishop a6, protecting his pawn. I don't like that. So maybe just knight e7 here, intending f5. And now I can think about h5, king h7, bishop h6. I still have the option of playing bishop takes here. But I think that h5 option is pretty interesting. Even if he moves his king away, if I can get that diagonal for my bishop, I might be in pretty good shape. Also, I could just play f5 here, take the very good diagonal here for my bishop. Hard to decide. I can play f5 or h5. f5 seems like the more natural move. If he takes, I can take back with my knight or my bishop, probably my knight, to get it better developed. Then my bishop's on a very nice long diagonal. I can put my rooks on the e-file, queen on d7. Yeah, that works. I was worried about bishop e5, but I have c6, and I can always play a6 to stop that. So f5. I don't really expect him to take there. I think it would be very good for me if he did. Especially considering that, well, after I take with my knight, if I can get my knight, if I can make it work, then I can play bishop takes f3, and then after g takes f3, he's got 3 isolated pawns on the king side here. Okay, I like knight takes, and I'm going to play rook e8. He can get the e-file temporarily by putting a rook there, and after I put a rook there, he can take. but I'm not too worried about that. If I play queen d7, though, he could play knight e5, and after I take his knight, he takes my bishop. I don't think that would work, though, because after queen d7, knight e5, bishop takes e5, bishop takes g4, I'm going to have a I was going to say I'm going to have a revealed attack on his bishop, but his bishop will also be attacking my queen, so that doesn't work. I'm running low on time here, so I got to make my moves more quickly. I think he's playing very well. I'm going to look for just activity here. I don't think he has any threats, so rook e8. Just going to play for activity. I can try something like queen f6 so that this knight is pinned, because if he moves it, I checkmate him. Well, moves it to anywhere but a4. If he moves it to a4, I play b5. Well, guess I can't do that, but you get the idea. Maybe I should play a6. It starts a queenside pawn storm and also takes b5 away from both his bishop and his queenside knight. Which is important, because if he plays his bishop there right now, I have to move my rook. And I can kick the bishop off of that diagonal eventually, but it's just annoying if he plays it right now. I do like this position for me, though. I think it's going to clarify into something that is either an extremely favorable endgame because of his pawn structure, or a position in which I have a material edge. I think Rob is a pretty strong player. Doesn't give himself enough credit. And I like that training journal he has. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Alright. I don't have anything like rook takes e2, as far as I know. Maybe just a6 here. Interestingly, he's offering me the h-pawn. After I take the knight, I can take the h-pawn. He is offering me the h-pawn. Should I take it? Or should I not? If I take there, he takes back with something, I take the h-pawn. I think it's going to be fine for me. I don't think he has any sort of roaring kingside attack. Also, I can take it with my queen and leave my knight there if I want. I have options, so I'm going to take there. Now after knight takes, I'm threatening his bishop. And he's still ahead in time, so I have to watch out. But if I play... I should have at least considered playing h5 there, threatening bishop h6. Wasn't even really looking at it, though. I can move my knight back to f5, though, and then play h5 and be threatening bishop h6. Rob, what are you going to do? He took there, so I don't have a choice, gotta take back. And he took the e-file. So that's a smart way to play. I'm just going to get my queen out of the way. Seems like this is as good a way to do it as any. Alright, and then I can play rook e8, and this is materially advantageous for me, so I think I should be okay. Could play f5, could play rook e8. Could play knight f5. Let's play rook e8, just play for activity. I don't have much time. I can always play bishop takes c3 to trade if I want to. I don't think it's a good idea right now, but I don't want to end up in a bishop's opposite color endgame, so that's an option. If he plays g3, I just put my knight back on f5. And d4 is a square that I can use for my knight thanks to the protection of my bishop. So knight f5, maybe threatening knight d4. I mean, it doesn't do much on knight d4, but on d4, but it's a great piece. I'm just going to bring the knight back to f5 before things get crazy. He can't really take on h6 because he just drops material. That's the nice thing about having a dark square bishop in this kind of setup when your opponent doesn't. He has a really hard time attacking your weak dark squares because he has nothing that moves on the dark squares. So, knight d4. You can't really kick it from d4. Ooh, I could play bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, rook takes here, pawn takes, queen takes, and if he plays rook takes, I have... if he plays rook takes, I get checkmated. He's threatening queen h8 checkmate and rook h8 checkmate. Maybe I don't get checkmated, I can play like f6 or something, but that's an uncomfortable situation. I don't think that's good for me, so I'm going to play knight d4. Things are getting a little bit difficult, so I congratulate him on his strong play here. I think he's conducting this attack pretty well. Threatening queen takes g4. You may get worried about that. But I saw that game he posted in his journal, and he seems to know how to play for activity when he's down, not worry about pawns, just go for the attack. So we may see a very strong attacking move here that doesn't defend the g-pawn. Okay, that's alright. That's an okay move. Problem is h5. After h5, things are locked down, and I don't know what he can do besides try to set up a sack with his bishop. If he moves his bishop back to f3, I just take it. So I should be fine here. Just have to watch out for tactical shots. And I can still play queen g4, threatening to take his bishop and his knight from my rook. And I've caught up on time. I'm ahead now. I think, unfortunately, g5, h5 left him with not much to do over there. So this should be very, very good for me. I'm just up a pawn now, and I have this protected passed pawn on the outside. I just want to trade down. And because of the way things are working out, I can move my knight back to f5. He could play bishop f3, I guess. Yeah, so maybe I shouldn't put my knight back on f5. Maybe I should leave it on d4. But I think this is very strong for me, even if I end up sacking my rook for that bishop. Because that bishop is the only thing he can use to break through. And my bishop is extremely strong on this diagonal. He's using a lot of time here, which is a dangerous idea. Alright, I think unfortunately that drops the bishop. He could play the move f3, but no, then I just take the knight. So rook takes e4 is the plan here. This was an interesting game, though. I think I have him here, unless I'm missing something tactically. But he launched a decent attack, and until the move g5, I was kind of worried. So I think Rob is a strong player. And I look forward to reading more about his progress in his journal. That was a pretty good idea that Josh came up with, that old chess journal thing. Alright, I can take with check now, and that should, or I can take here with the rook. The rook or the knight can take here. Doesn't really, doesn't make much of a difference. Let's just take with the rook. So I got a decent material edge here. This should be a win. I really enjoyed this game, though. Alright, he resigned. Good game, Rob. Thanks for playing me. I appreciate it. And I'd be happy to play again in the future if you feel like it. I'm going to post this on chessvideos.com, and I hope you enjoy watching it. Thanks. Bye, guys.